As people have seen recently, the trailer for a new Crow movie has finally come out. For years, we've been hearing about people attempting to remake the original 1994 film starring the late Brandon Lee, but it seemed like something that would never happen. For example, over a decade ago, Bradley Cooper was supposed to play the Crow, but ended up leaving the film. However, as I said, a trailer has finally been released, and as always, I felt I needed to make a video about my reaction and how others have reacted to the trailer. Before that, I do want to talk about the original. The original isn't just a movie many people have grown to love, but it's one of my favorite films of all time. The Crow was released in 1994 and is based on James O'Barr's comic book series of the same name. It follows the story of Eric Draven, played by the late Brandon Lee, a guitarist who was killed along with his fiancée by thugs. However, because of the circumstances of his death, Eric comes back to life a year later to get revenge. While comic book movies are the norm today, the 1980s and 90s attempted to do the same thing with mixed results. While there were good films such as Tim Burton's Batman in the 80s and Blade in the 90s, there were considerably more bad than good comic movies. Just to name a few, there was Spawn, Judge Dredd, Steel, Superman 3 and 4, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin. My point is that comic movies weren't the best for the most part at the time. It was safer to assume they would end up being bad instead of good. Again, the good ones I listed seem more like the exception than the rule when you see what else came out at the time. So how does that reflect on The Crow? Well, The Crow was also one of those exceptions because it was great. To sum it up briefly, The Crow was amazing. It captured the feel of the 90s with its dark looks and edgy concepts such as murder, drug use, parental neglect, and many others. Again, the film fits the decade it came out while also being amazing. That's thanks in large part to the star of the film, Brandon Lee. For those unfamiliar, Brandon Lee was the son of the actor and legendary martial artist Bruce Lee. At the time, Brandon had starred in many action films, such as Rapid Fire, but wanted to branch out as an actor. As he said in an interview with Desert News, quote, "I'd like to have the kind of career that would have a wide body of work, like Mel Gibson, who does the Mad Max and Lethal Weapon movies, but can also step off and have credibility with The Year of Living Dangerously or Hamlet," unquote. For him, The Crow was his ticket to branch out and have the career he wanted. While it's still known for its action scenes, Lee also got to show off his incredible acting ability. He wasn't just a badass hero, he was a man put through hell and at times bordered on insanity because of what he went through.
She'll tell me a story. A man and a woman in law a year ago. Motherfucking mom. Listen!
Seeing his performance lets you know he could have had the career he talked about and probably would have gone on to be in some fantastic films after this. One popular theory I read was he could have gone on to be Neo in The Matrix. Unfortunately, Brandon Lee died during the filming of The Crow. While death is always tragic, Lee's death has put the original Crow on an unattainable pedestal. Fans are passionate about this movie because of Brandon Lee's performance, and have every right to be. The film would have taken his career to a new level, which would have taken him out of his father's shadow. However, we're all left wondering what could have happened had things not ended the way they did. So why am I bringing this up? Like all passionate fans, they're always ready to judge any remake of The Crow. Heck, if you check the comments of the trailer for the 2024 version, almost all of them are talking about how the movie is a mistake and Brandon Lee is the only Crow. But are these comments justified? Based on the trailer alone, yes. This version of The Crow, which again is supposed to be based on the same story of Eric Draven, feels like the only thing it has in common is the name. When compared to each other, they don't look or act the same. Let's start with the looks first, because that was my first problems with the trailer. The original face paint Brandon Lee had is still iconic and is probably the first thing you picture when anyone mentions The Crow. The new version looks bland and generic in comparison. It doesn't stand out like Brandon Lee's, it is being criticized relentlessly. One popular comment I've seen is that it looks like a knockoff Jared Leto Joker. I hate to be mean, but here's a pic of them side by side. The more I look at it, the more I sadly have to agree with it. Unfortunately, the acting isn't much better based on this trailer. As I said earlier, Brandon Lee's performance made him look like a person on the brink of going insane as he sought revenge for himself and his fiancée. However, he still showed his sanity while caring for Sarah and trying to protect her. The new Eric comes off as an edgelord focused on revenge while also trying too hard to look cool. We don't even see any hint of Sarah being in this movie to imply we'll get that again. despite the trailer feeling the need to show almost everything. Not to go off on a rant, but I hate trailers that show too much. The original Crows trailer was only half the length of the new one and didn't give away that much. The new one has shown us who Eric and Shelley are, showed a little of why they were killed, and gave away most likely what would have been the movie's best action scenes. These creators clearly didn't hear the phrase, less is more. Anyway, back to my rant about the new Crow. While the movie already has many problems, one stands out the most. It's the most significant hindrance, and it's why I hate it so much. That problem is that it doesn't need to be a remake to the original. For those unaware, many different people have become the Crow, not just in films, but also in several comic versions. Just to name a few, there's Joshua, who was a Native American killed by Confederate soldiers during the Civil War, who comes back to get revenge on the reincarnations of his killers. There's Iris Shaw, a former U.S. Marshal who seeks revenge against her and her unborn child's killers. Finally, there's Mark Long, a former detective who has to get revenge for himself and his dead wife, while also trying to save his twin daughters from being sold into human trafficking. My point is that it's not like the only option for a new Crow movie was to remake the original story. There are already a few options to focus on a new Crow story that sound like great ideas for a film. In addition, they could have just made their own version of the Crow instead, like Alex from The Crow Salvation. All this tells me is that this movie is too scared to stand on its own, and hopes that having the same names as the original will make it successful. Many other things try to do the same, and they all fail. You can have the same names as the characters, or the same name as the thing you're remaking. However, when fans see you've drastically changed things, they see it's only a cash grab and should be avoided. That's why Dragon Ball Evolution and the live-action Cowboy Bebop failed. Could this have been a Crow movie? Yes, it could have. Was it a good idea to quote-unquote remake the original, while also appearing to make drastic changes to the point it doesn't resemble anything from it? No, because now you're giving fans a reason to hate this version. As I said, the original was unique, it still stands out decades later. The new one comes off as generic, and will most likely be forgotten after a couple weeks. That's why the remake, and I use the term remake loosely, of The Crow is not only a mistake, but an outright insult to Brandon Lee's final performance. At least I'm thankful it got people talking about the original again, so a new generation can learn about the original classic. Before ending this video, I want to clarify that these are only my thoughts and opinions, like all my other videos. If you saw this trailer and think the new Crow movie will be good, that's fine. My videos are only an attempt to open a discussion on topics, and this video is no different, so whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I'd love to hear them in the comments section. As always, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to see more of my content in the future. I'm Marco Strange. Stay safe, stay strange.